Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Torah with your host, me, Rabbi Anibal. So happy to be here once again, sharing this virtual classroom with all of you, so we can study a little bit of Torah, and we can inspire our lives to increase our joy, increase our meaning, and increase our knowledge of Judaism. That is very important. And well, we have a wonderful Parsha this week, so I hope you're going to follow along and enjoy this wonderful text from the Jewish tradition. Shelly Jochinov is here. Hello, Shelly. Welcome to the class. How are you doing? And whoever else is there, please say hello in the chat. The chat is open. I'm streaming live on YouTube and Facebook. And I always like to know who is on the other side, who is there with me, sharing this virtual space. It's one of the things about streaming on YouTube and Facebook is I cannot see your faces. To be honest, even if we're over Zoom, I realize that most people, they shut off their cameras, so I also cannot see their faces anyway. So, anyway, Kim Kutzma, welcome to the class. Shalom, welcome. Yeah, we are going to study today Parsha Lech Lecha. Jerome Fomin is here, and Paro Goldman, welcome. Yeah, you see, I have to encourage you guys to type in the chat, so I know that you're there. And yeah, we are going to study Lech Lecha. Why is Lech Lecha? It's the third Parsha in the Torah, and which is interesting, and you're going to see it. You're going to see in a few minutes once we start. First parsha of the Torah is Bereshit, which is the beginning of the world. Second parsha is Noach, the story of Noah and the flood, which is the second beginning of the world. Remember, the world was destroyed, and Noah and his family became kind of Adam and Eve, right, of the new world. And then the third parsha, which is it's Lech Lecha, it's introduced Abraham. And you will see how this is technically a third beginning for the world. So we have 1, 2, 3, three beginnings and three consecutive. Hold on a minute. We have some spams here. There. So, welcome Howard Haimovich from New Brunswick. Miramichi, that's how you pronounce it? Miramichi? Miramichi? I don't know. One day I will have to go visit you in New Brunswick. So I will discover, I heard it's beautiful. I've never been in New Brunswick, by the way. Never, ever. Brendan, David are here. Ruvain is here. Welcome. So I was saying that Parsha Lech Lecha, the third Torah portion of the Torah, in the book of Genesis, it will introduce Miramichi by pronunciation. Okay. Why is it called Miramichi? Let us know in the chat. Was it a person? What is it? I'm curious. So back to the Parsha. Parsha Lech Lecha, the story of Abraham. And you will see that the rabbis seem to find in this Torah portion hints. This is also a new beginning. Comparable, I will say, to the creation of the world and comparable to the world after the flood. Okay? So, see, it was very interesting. It's a new concept, something that I studied this year. I didn't know this material last year, so I'm very excited to share all these things that I learned from this Parsha with all of you. Okay? So, if we are all ready to begin, I would love to start with all of you, with the class. Okay, so I want to bring the class here. And let's start with the very beginning. This is how Parshat Lech Lecha begins. Okay, this is how it starts. ויאמר אדוני אל אברהם לך לך מארצך וממולדתך ומבית אביך אל הארץ אשר אראך. God said to Abraham, remember, I know this is confusing. At this point, Abraham was not Abraham yet. His name was Abram, and then eventually God's going to change his name. So I apologize in advance if I keep calling him Abraham, because that's the way we all know him, but for a little while, he was Abram. Okay? So at this point, he was Abram. So God said to Abram, go forth from your native land and from your father's house to the land that I will show you. Okay? Very famous phrase, if you ask me, from the Torah, where oh look, Howard Haymovich, he said it means Mi'kmaq land in an Indian Aboriginal word. Fabulous. Thank you so much. It's called Miramichi. So it's a indigenous language. It says Mi'kmaq land. Okay. Okay. So what the Torah doesn't say is why God chose Abraham to do this. Because it says, God said to Abraham, leave your home, leave your land, and go to the land that I will show you. We learned to know afterwards that that was the land of Israel. But we never learn why he was chosen, which is not the case of Noah, for example, that the Torah is very clear on why Noah was chosen to be the one building the ark and starting a new world. It says that Noah was a righteous person, right? The Torah doesn't say why God chose Abraham. Now, what the Torah does is giving us some hints during Abraham's life, so you realize that the guy was amazing, that he has lots of values, and he was really, really close to God. But the Torah does not say so explicitly. I guess maybe the Torah does say things about Noah because without God saying it, it will be difficult for us to see it. If you see, if you explore a little bit about the life of Noah, other than God saying us that he was righteous in his generation, what we learned from him wasn't so good after all, right? In 120 years that took him to build the ark, he never convinced anyone to change their behavior, right? Otherwise, that person would be saved with him, but didn't happen. Also, as soon as the flood ended, the first thing he did was to plant a vineyard and to get drunk. And then he was involved in this incest episode, also mentioned in the Torah. So it's interesting. Without God telling us that he was righteous, it will be very difficult for us to discover it by ourselves. With Abraham, I will say it's the opposite. God doesn't have to tell us how great he was, because we read enough about Abraham to realize that by ourselves. So maybe that's the reason. That's why God doesn't necessarily say why he was chosen, because we can actually figure that out pretty easily. Okay? So I want to spend a few minutes with all of you today to learn more about Abraham, who he was, why he is so important for us, and what was so special about him. So without that introduction, let's dive into our text. Okay? Let's bring first the words of Maimonides. He actually tried to explain how Abraham became the Abraham that we know. He was born in a pagan land, but something happened that triggered a change on his life. And these are the words of Maimonides. Let's read it together. It says, after this prodigious child was weaned, he began to muse while he was still young, and started to ponder by day and by night, and would question how it was possible for the earth to continue to revolve without a guide. And he had no mentor, nor did anyone reveal anything to him, but he was immersed in Ur Kasdim. That's his land. Among foolish idolaters. His father and mother and all of the people serve idols. And he, Abraham, will serve with them, while his heart pondered and mused, until he understood the path of truth and realized the line of justice by virtue of his own correct reasoning. Then he came to understand that there was only one God, and that he was, and God was the guide of the celestial will. God created everything, and there is no God among all creation other than him, other than God. Now, it's very interesting that it mentions here, the Maimonides, that Abraham was able to figure out this without any mentors. Because eventually the Midrash will say that when he moved to the land of Israel, he did have mentors there. In fact, I talked about that. I can't remember. It was this. I think it was this last Shabbat during my sermon, and how there is a beautiful midrash saying that Abraham had the chance to meet Noah. Well, because if you calculate how many years Noah lived, there was almost like a 60 years overlap between the life of Noah and the life of Abraham. It's fascinating. They threw the midrash, and it said that it was an overlap, but for sure that Abraham had a chance to study with Shem, which was one of Noah's children. Yes, Jerome, it said Noah, his mentor, but not yet when he started to realize this. This is what happened. And it happened to all of us as well. When we start thinking and you feel that you are into something, that's when you start searching around you. Who can help me? Who can help me to reach the next level? And that's when we reach out for mentors. It's like, let's say that you discover that you have a talent. You're good for music or for writing or for painting, right? And that's when your parents will say, okay, maybe we should get you a teacher to help you improve that. But you already have that first step, which is a huge step when you start to try and to discover new things about yourself. So Abraham, what he did was, and his talent, I will say, was to be able to figure out things about how idolatry didn't go anywhere. And he discovered a new reality, and he has all this curiosity, and that's when God, I would say, facilitated Abraham to cross paths with other people that they also discovered, or they also knew that it was one God. One was Noah, and for sure Shem, that it was Noah's son. Now, I don't know if you realize that we are all called Semites. Semites, actually, the word Semite is coming from the word Shem, which is one of the sons of Noah. We basically come from him as well. Okay, so this is very interesting. And I'm wondering if what Maimonides is trying to say here is that sometimes we can see in children how they have this natural capacity to relate to God in a very simple way, and then we complicate everything as an adult, right? We start to overcomplicate and overthink a lot, and I guess that's when we need guidance. When we start overcomplicating things, that's when we need guidance. Any questions other than Jerome? Jerome, you said wasn't Noah his mentor. I would like to hear what you have to think, guys. So let's continue. Meanwhile, about other and this is now I want to bring to you the text from the Maharal of Prague, and he's the one who actually saying that the story of Abraham is the story of the third creation in the world. First was the beginning, then was Noah, and the flood and the new creation, and now it's Abraham. And listen what he said, because I think it's fantastic. The Maharal of Prague says, so it was concerning Abraham Avinu, Abraham, the foundation stone of the world, who was born in the land of Kasdim. Remember, Ur Kasdim, that's where he was born. Of whom it is written that God regrets their creation daily. So basically, it doesn't look like Kasdim was a nice place. For they are a nation of Tohu, an incomplete creation. I don't know if you remember from the beginning of the world, before God said, let it be light, right? At the very, very beginning of Genesis, it says that the world was Tohu Vavohu. And it's usually, there is no way to translate that literally, because it's not clear, the concept of Tohu Vavohu, but it seems to imply chaos, lack of order, lack of law. Okay? So that was the Tohu. And now the Midrash connects Ur Kasdim, the city of Kasdim, with the concept of Tohu, the concept of something that is chaotic and incomplete. Okay? But you see, there was something missing, and then Abraham realized that. But let's keep reading. So that Abraham was born in Ur Kasdim is a great matter. For just as Abraham was the beginning of the world, and before him everything was Tohu, without any creation at all, therefore Abraham was joined to Kasdim, which was a creation without substance. For every beginning has nothingness before it and in proximity to it, which is why there is a beginning. For this reason Abraham was not born in another land, for then he would not have been a beginning. Because Abraham was a beginning, he was born in a place where a beginning was fitting. For before a beginning, there is nothingness. So this is fantastic in the sense that Abraham was born in that city because Abraham was to the world what the creation, the very first creation, what God said, let it be light, was to the Tohu Vavohu mentioned in the Torah. So that was the impact of Abraham. Abraham was the light that came to create something good out of that Tohu Vavohu, represented, in the words of the Midrash, of course, by Ur Kasdim, that city. And that's why I say that we understand now here that this parsha, the third portion of the Torah, is in some way another form of creation that related or at the same level that the creation of the world and the new world presented by Noah. Because now I know that God promised to Noah that God wasn't going to destroy the world anymore. Remember? It says that, it said no more floods. No more floods in this world. Why? Because now it's up to us to bring justice to the world. The thing is, because before Noah there was no justice, there was no law, there were no commandments. So it was up to God to administer justice. If humanity will sin, God, the judge of the universe, will take the matters in his own hands, because there was no other way to do it. After Noah, the message was, now you guys, humanity, you know what you're supposed to do. So now it's up to you to make that happen. But it's things that it looks like the world wasn't in that direction until Abraham came to remind humanity that it's up to us to make this world a better world. We should not expect God to do our work. We have to do it. And he brought that message all the way from the city of Kasdim, that it was all the opposite, because it had nothing, but he figured out by himself that that had to be done. Any comments? I want to know your comments, guys. Okay, I will keep reading meanwhile, but feel free to use the chat to let me know what's going on there. Now, Rambam stresses the fact that Abraham came to the true vision of God that allowed him to overcome the ancient human mistake of idolatry all on his own, totally unaided. It was in recognition of the greatness of his achievement and the correctness of Abraham's vision that God elevated Abraham to the level of prophecy and gave him the ultimate recognition of communicating with the divine personally. Yeah, Howard, isn't that true? It was me too. I never heard that concept before. Yeah, and this is interesting because here, Rabbi Weiss, what he's saying is that, sometimes we feel that disconnected from God, it is expected from us to take the first step. The same way here is God didn't talk to Abraham until Abraham make the effort to connect to God. So sometimes it's the concept of the expectation for us to take the first step, and after we take that first step, we get elevated and we get closer to God. And that's why it's almost like God is extending a hand, but we cannot reach it unless we also extend our hand to do that. This concept takes special meaning every year for the high holidays when we talk about Shuvah, when we talk about repentance, when we talk about how even when we need to repent, we need to take the first step, and then when we do it, God is there waiting for us to help us the rest of the way. But we need to start that process. Shelley, you say, trying to wrap my head around this one head, okay? It's a... So, let's continue. Now, let's go to the Midrash. This is Midrash Breshit Rabbah, and it says, Rabbi Yitzchak taught, it is comparable to somebody who traveled from place to place and saw a burning palace. He said, the tower cannot be without a leader. Then the master of the tower appeared to him and told him, I am the master of the palace. So Abraham Avinu said, can the world be without a leader? God appeared to him and told him, I am the master of the world. So this is what happened. Let me talk a little bit. Jerome, the same concept happened according to the Midrash with the split of the Red Sea until Nachshon ben Aminadab took the first step. The water didn't split. The same concept appears many times in Jewish tradition. That's totally true. Now, let's go to this Midrash Rabbah here. And this is what is fascinating, because it says it is comparable to somebody who traveled from place to place and saw a burning palace. Now, there are different translations of this. The most common is the one that says a burning palace. Some other translation would say that he saw a light. It's like, it's like when you're walking or driving by a house, and if you see that it's light inside, that means that there is somebody inside the house. So, okay, it must be an owner here because there is a light inside. You start using your reasoning to figure out that there is somebody either inside the house or paying the bills, so the electricity could be there and so forth. You understand? So, but it's interesting if you take a burning palace, because if it's burning, it looks like it's about to be destroyed. It's a totally different midrash. Because if it was just that, let's say, the midrash, the interpretation that said that Abraham saw a light, I said, oh, okay, so if there is a light, there is an owner. The same happened with the world. If there is a light, if things happening, there is an owner. But if you take the words as it was a burning palace, it takes the midrash to a totally different level, because the rabbis explain that is closer to what we see in the world. We see chaos. in the world. We see the world almost literally in these days burning down, right? With wars, with tragedies and things. So how is it possible? How is it possible? Is it burning down? How is it possible that there is nobody doing anything about it, right? So Abraham saw this palace burning, and he said, is it possible that the palace has nobody taking care of it, so it will let it burn down? And so what happened here is Abraham came closer to the palace and said, I want to talk to the owner. I want to see why you are letting this palace burn. Just, that I've never seen such thing. And then the master of the tower appeared to him and said, hey, I'm the master of the palace, and there is a reason for this. Let me explain to you what's going on. Well, the same happened here, that Abraham saw a very frightening reality. For example, in the city of Ur Kasdim, he saw the corruption, idolatry, and murder, robberies, and all the things. And he started to think about the world and said, but come on, it has to be a master. It has to be a creator. And then if there is a creator, he said, but God, creator of the world, can you explain to me why you allow this to happen? And that's when God said to Abraham, I'm the master of the world. Let me explain to you why this is happening. And that was the beginning of Abraham. That was when he was able to understand the ways of the world. Now, this is not much different of what happened with Moses. Literally. With Moses was literal. When Moses was walking around with the sheep and he saw the burning bush. Burning. Look at this midrash. Burning bush. And Moses said, how is this possible? That is burning and not consuming? I'm going to come closer to explore a little bit more. And when Moses decided to come closer and to explore, God said, hey, it's me, it's God. So it's talking about that everything starts with curiosity. And then when we try to understand why or the essence of God, everything should start with curiosity. Sometimes we say, no, there are things that you should never ask. Don't ask why. Don't ask why. Well, I think, why not? We have to understand that sometimes there are things that they're never going to come back, or they may not have a reason, or we will never understand. But I don't think that we should stop ourselves from trying to ask why. Number one, because that will bring us closer to God. The question of why God, why, it already implies that you are opening dialogue with God. If there is something, think about it. Every time that you ask God why, that meant that you opened a dialogue with God. Sometimes if we don't ask why, we never open a dialogue with God. So it's a very interesting theological concept. Roberto Franco, welcome to the class. So I'm wondering if it ever happens to you, if you ever ask God why, and if that open up a long-term relationship with God. And without things happening to us, that would have never happened. Right? We would have never established a relationship with God. And God wants to establish a relationship with us. And most of the time, that happens when we are actually seeing the burning palace. Just like this midrash. When we see the burning palace. And when we see the burning palace, we have two options. Number one, you keep walking. Not my problem. Not my palace. Number two, you get closer and say, okay, is there anything I can do? You see, that was Abraham. That was Moses. Reuven, you said the rulers and kings of old weren't praying to statues, only the commoners, etc. The kings were extremely advanced and were guided by something beyond our comprehension. We don't know, because the Midrash is trying to explain that it will say it. I think I have it later on, right? Howard, you said, I have a story about me concerning curiosity. I was 16 years old and I saw my first computer and I was so curious about it. Yeah, but sometimes, yeah. But I'm wondering, sometimes we expand our curiosity to try to understand God. There is nothing wrong about it. Yeah. I said, Howard, I said, at one point a voice in my head said to me that that's how I will earn my living 25 years. Yeah. But by the way, you have a very interesting concept. Very interesting concept that sometimes we say God never answers me. I always ask God why, but God never answers me. And I think the problem is we're all expecting a voice from heaven. But it not always works like that. Sometimes we have to learn to listen to the voice of God in different ways, not necessarily a sound. It's almost like we pray to God and we're expecting something that will sound like, I don't know, like Morgan Freeman talking back to us. Morgan Freeman with reverb, right? But doesn't necessarily work that way. Sometimes it's an intuition, right? When you can feel something in different ways. Let's see. Reuven, the more one asks and investigates, the more one learns just how advanced the people, leaders of Ur were. I was amazed appeared one could create something from nothing with this. So, okay. Yeah, but everything starts with curiosity. Otherwise, just keep walking. Just keep walking, but you're missing an opportunity. Can you imagine if Moses wouldn't come closer to the burning bush? He saw it. He saw that there was something burning and it was not normal. That's not the way things go, but hey, I have a busy day. I will leave it there. He didn't do that. He stopped. He followed his instinct, which is very interesting. Now, let's go to the Talmud and bring something also very interesting, right, about the Midrash that I just read. Rabbi Yochanan taught in the name of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, from the day that God created the world, no human being called God Master, until Abraham came and called him Master. As it says, he said, my Master, with what shall I know that I will inherit it? And this is a part of the dialogue between Abraham and God. So that this is a new way to relate, that Abraham realized that God was in command of the world. And sometimes we make what Abraham did was to put his trust on God as a king. God as a king versus putting his trust on human beings as kings. And there is a midrash that says that the king tried to kill him with a furnace. I don't know if you ever heard that, but it was not successful. So yes, it's a midrash. You should not take it literally, but it's talking about these two concepts of the celestial king or ruler represented by God and putting our trust in God, or putting our trust on human beings. That's what it is. Now, one of the other hints that we have about Abraham and why he was so special is the way he's referred to in the Torah. You see, in Genesis 14:3, we read, Vayavo apalish vayaged leAvram ha'ivri. Here is called Avram ha'ivri. A fugitive brought the news to Abraham the Hebrew. who was dwelling at the terebinth of Mamre the Amorite, kinsman of Eshcol and Aner, these being Abraham's allies. Okay, that is not the important part. The important part here is that the Torah is calling him Abraham the Hebrew. And yeah, when we read the Torah in these days and you read the Hebrew, maybe you don't realize that maybe you won't even realize that you have to be curious. What does it mean, Abraham the Hebrew? Why was he called Hebrew? What is that coming from? When in the Torah, it said Abraham ha-Ivri. Ivri. Okay? The rabbis try to explain what ha-Ivri, or the Hebrew, means. And Rashi says, Abraham is called the Ivri, meaning the one who comes from the other side of the river. Ever I am. Ever I am. Ha-Ivri. Okay? Very important to understand that. Now, the Midrash expands the concept of why we call Abraham the Hebrew. You see, when you see Hebrew in English, doesn't have the same ring. It doesn't tell you much information. When you read it in Hebrew, it totally changes, because the word Ivri will give you a hint of where that the word comes from. Okay, from Ever. Ever was also, remember, one of the children of Noah. So this is very interesting. Now, the Midrash will say, Avram the Ivri, Rabbi Yehuda said, this teaches us that the entire world was on one side and he was on the other side. It's almost like Abraham the Hebrew means Abraham the one who is in the other side. Kind of strange nickname, unless that, yeah, maybe he was the odd one, the one who was different, the one who seems to come from a different world, right? Have you ever met such people that it feels like they're odd, they don't fit, they're different. So it looks like Abraham didn't have any problem to be recognized as such, because he realized that the whole world had one way of functioning, and he decided to try something different. And that was, the Torah called him Abraham the Ivri, the one who was on the other side. It takes a lot to put yourself in a position where you are the one who is on the other side and you stay strong, right? Shelley Chochinov, not of this world. Yeah, this world, physically is this world, but spiritually and theologically, he's in a different world. He discovered a new way of living, right? And I'm not saying that other people didn't discover it as well. It's just that they decided to follow, or they fell victims of peer pressure. And it happens to all of us. Let me tell you this, because I talk to people all the time, people to come to synagogue, or people who are, sometimes I meet with them for funerals and things. You will be shocked. You will be shocked how many believers in the closet we have. Have you ever heard the concept of believer in the closet? It's somebody who believes in God and they will be happy to come to synagogue, not to chat with other people. They will be happy to come to synagogue to pray to God, to have a spiritual experience where they come, but they will never do it because they are afraid that they are going to be judged by their secular friends. So they remain a believer in the closet. And Judaism is full of such people. It's amazing. It's amazing. Maybe you are one of them. Maybe you know people like that. That it takes a lot to go against the peer pressure and to follow your instincts. You don't want to be considered by your friends the one who is in the other side, the Ivri. So we fall prey of that. Yeah, Shelley, you said it's very difficult. It's very difficult. So sometimes we give in. We give in and we don't come to synagogue because they're inviting us to watch the game on Saturday, right? And yeah, I don't want them to judge me because I prefer to go to synagogue. So you go to the game and so forth. Abraham was such person that he had the strength, the internal strength to be committed. Okay? Yeah. So you see, back to the Talmud. The Talmud says, when the wicked Nimrod, this is the king of, this was the king who tried to kill Abraham because Abraham was, I guess, somehow successful preaching the believing in one God. In fact, you will see, and I will recommend you, if you are attending services this Saturday at the synagogue, we have a bat mitzvah. Her name is Adele. She will have a bat mitzvah Shari Zedek. And that's what she's talking on her Dvar Torah. Okay? Is talking about the people that they were actually inspired by Abraham. And the Torah says that they left with him, if you know how to read the verse. So there were many people that they were inspired by Abraham and they left with him. So it means that Abraham was actually making an impact in the city. So Nimrod, it says according to the Midrash, he threw Abraham into a furnace to kill him, to the fire. The angel Gabriel said before God, Lord of the world, I will descend and cool and save the righteous one from the furnace. God answered him, I am singular in my world, and he is singular in his world. It is fitting for the singular to rescue the singular. So basically, God said to the angel, no, I will do it myself. But the point is that the Midrash is trying to explain, like he was one in a million, Abraham, the way he was able to stay strong to his beliefs. This is not common. It takes a lot to break free from peer pressure, no matter what. But eventually, you know what happened? And actually, and I believe that this is the case, eventually God said to Abraham, you know what? Get out of there. Because there is that much that there is not that much opposition that you can handle by yourself. You know, if people will start throwing you into the furnace and things like that, you have to leave. Have you ever heard the concept of a toxic environment? Let me say in the chat if you ever heard that. Have you ever suffered that? A toxic environment that you feel that you have so much to give or to grow, but you can't because your surroundings are toxic. So sometimes when that happens, you have to walk away from that. Sometimes I've seen it could be a group of friends, could be a marriage. That people that they get abused, right? When you get abused, what else can you do? You have to walk away from that. And then I've seen it. People who one day they said, no more abuse for me. I'm going to walk away and never look back. And they become a different person. Sometimes the new environment could be a huge difference for what we do. In Judaism, we have a saying that is Meshaneh hamakom, Meshaneh hamazal. Is it? You know what mazal is? Mazel, right? The luck. Meshaneh makom is that if you change the place, you can change your quote unquote luck. It basically means that they are sometimes you can go to a better place when circumstances are more conducive into something good. Yeah. Now, more about Abraham, because this thing that he has to endure in that city, if you think that was difficult, the Mishnah said that it was much more to that. The Mishnah said Abraham was challenged with 10 tests and overcame all of them to inform us how great was the love of our father Abraham for God. Now, this is interesting because it's opening also the door for us to analyze or to try to understand what it means, this concept of a divine test. Have you ever heard that? The concept that sometimes we get tested by God. Well, it says that Abraham was tested by God. It's a very difficult theological concept to believe that we get tested by God, because at the end of the day you will say, why? Why does God have to test us? Doesn't God know our limits or what are you made of if God is our creator? So why the test? Keep that thought, because that's a good question. So the Midrash will explain here the test, okay? So God saying is pure, Abraham was purified by 10 trials. And these are the 10 trials or tests. Okay, let's name them. Number 1, he was thrown into the furnace. As it says, I am God that took you out from Ur Kasdim. In that context, Ur Kasdim is talking about, is the name of the furnace. So they said, I am God who took you out. I am the one who took you out from the furnace. Number 2, God instructed him, go for yourself. So test number 2, leave. It's a test. Some people never leave, and that is their way of failing the test. If your destiny supposed to be going to a different place. Very interesting. So for Abraham, the leave your home, the comfort of your home, was a test. And he passed it, he left. He went to the land of Israel. Now, tests 3 and 4, there were 2 tests concerning his wife Sarah. Number 5, Hagar, as it says, consort now with my maid servant. Number 6, and with Ishmael, and it says, drive out this slave woman with her son. Number 7, going to war with the kings, and it says, he armed his disciples. Number 8, circumcision, that God instructed him, walk before me and be perfect. But you see, because he was already in his 80s, right? And he had to circumcise himself. So it was part of the test. Number 9, in the covenant between the parts when he prophesied that his descendants will be enslaved in 4 exiles. This is interesting. What God said to Abraham, I want to make a covenant with you. Great. Well, but that means that in the future, your descendants are going to be slaves. Will you go ahead and do and sign the covenant anyway? Abraham did, because part of the test was to trust that something good is going to come out of that slavery from Egypt, right? Number 10, with Isaac, take please your son and your only one. So when God asked him to sacrifice Isaac. So those are according to the Midrash, the 10 tests that Abraham has to endure. How to endure in his life. Now, Rabbi Levi says, Abraham is called the great man among giants. Why is he called great? Because he was worthy to have been created before Adam. However, the Holy One, blessed be he, said, perhaps Abraham will damage the world, and there will not be anyone to come and rectify it after him. Therefore God said, I will create Adam first, and in the events he damages the world, Abraham will come and fix it up after him. What an amazing thing. It's to know that Abraham's soul was created at the beginning, and it was waiting patiently to come into this world to be the one rectifying what previous generations did. Which once the soul comes to this world, you have to understand this too. The body doesn't know why we come. You could be great. Actually, I believe that each one of you is great. Each one of you have something to contribute to this world. God already knows what it is. God knows your strengths, your weaknesses, and everything. But how do you know? How do you know how far you can go? And the rabbi said, that's why the tests come. The tests are not something to prove God what you can do or you cannot. The test is something that it will make you aware of something that God knows, your soul knows, but there is no way for your soul to tell you, to let you know, because remember, when we are born, the angel touches our lip and we cannot remember anything. So the test, the difficulties that we have in life are there so we can discover our strength, and then we can realize why we are here. Let me share it with you. Just as Abraham was tested with 10 trials, so too each and every Jew is challenged during the course of their lives with 10 trials. For the lives of every Jew is marked by ongoing challenges to inform him how endeared he is to God. The essential feature of a Jew being descendant of Abraham is that he trusts in God when faced with a test. Okay, that's number one. Number two, it says, set Rabbi Yonah flax, flax, the grain. The more you pound it, the more it improves. When is it true? When it's of good quality. But when it is of inferior quality, if you pound it, it bursts. Similarly, God tests none but the righteous. In other words, the ones who are going to pass the test, right? The one who had what it takes to pass it. Doesn't mean that you will pass it. It means that you have what it takes. Said Rabbi Yehuda Bar Shalom, a potter does not tap on the weak vessels or jar, lest it break. On what does he tap? On a strong vessel. Said Rabbi Eliezer, this can be compared to a farmer who has 2 cows, one strong and one weak. On which one does he place the yoke? It is not on the one that is strong, right? And Para Goldman, you said, it's obvious that God did not test Abraham in order to know if he will withstand the test. After all, God knows everything, etc. Exactly. God tested Abraham in order for Abraham to know what he was made of. I can't make it any simpler. Let me share with you this. The problem here is obvious, and this is what I was talking. God is all-knowing, and this is what you and Paro are saying. So God is all-knowing. So any such test will be superfluous. Perhaps the point of the Midrash is that a potter taps his pot to demonstrate its quality, not to determine it. Right? The test allows others, Abraham himself and all future generations, to know the quality of Abraham's faith and character. Thus, Genesis Rabbah states that the word nisa, the word nisa, to test, indicates that this test was like the raising of a flag, nes, announcing Abraham's greatness to the world. In other words, what the rabbi is saying, why would the potter tap the what is the word you use? The pot? Why would do it? So the potential customer will say, "Oh, I can see, it's actually a good quality." The potter already knew. The potter knows the quality of the vessel. The potter made it. He knows that it's thick enough and there are no cracks on it. So he will tap it in front of the customer, so the customer will know how great it is. So in this case, it will say that all the tests of Abraham were recorded in the Torah, so future generations will know Abraham's characters and why God chose Abraham and what we can do to be like Abraham and why it's so important for us to be like Abraham. But at the same time, God proved to Abraham what he was made of. And that was, I think it's very important for us to understand as well. Sometimes every time we overcome a challenge, it's telling us how strong we are. It's important for us to see that if we get stuck on the pain of the challenge, then we cannot grow. And sometimes that's the thing, we don't see the lesson. We don't learn the lesson with every challenge we have because we cannot pass the pain of the moment. It reminds me when, and we are going to see it in a couple of weeks, when we talk about Jacob. When Jacob fought with the angel all night, and the angel injured Jacob. And the angel said at the end, "Let me go." And Jacob said, "I won't let you go until you bless me." Why would Jacob said that to the angel? "I won't let you go until you bless me." If he just injured him. Because what happened is Jacob went through a painful situation, and I said, if this situation is going to end, thank God that it's going to end, I need to see the blessing behind it. Otherwise, why did I go through this painful situation if there is nothing for me to learn? Was just for the sake of pain? No. Jacob said, I want to see the blessing in the situation. So that's how I wish that we can all do that, right? Every time we go through a painful situation, that we can all see the lesson, so we can all grow with that. Otherwise, it's just the pain, and I don't believe that was the idea. If there is pain, there has to be some kind of lesson attached to it, or at least it's to us to find that, to find the blessing behind it. Okay, and just like that, the hour is over. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in this afternoon. Remember, if you missed any part of the class, don't worry. You have a few options. You can replay it from our YouTube or Facebook channels, or it's going to be restreamed, rebroadcasted tonight at 8 p.m. Central Time. So you will have another opportunity to learn a little bit about Lech Lecha and the story of Abraham, and why Abraham is so important for us as Jews, and why Abraham is so important to the world. Okay? Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And as I always say, stay safe. Hope to see you soon. And if you want to learn more about all the wonderful things we do at the Shaare Zedek, visit our website, ezedwinnipeg.ca, or our Facebook page. We have lots of great things and great classes for you that you can take in person or online. If you haven't done it yet, please subscribe to our channel and hit the bell so you will be notified every time we go live or every time we upload something to our channels. Have a great day. Stay safe. Hope to see you soon. Bye, everyone.